Welcome to the Bento Grid tutorial. I have some assets here, some fonts, some icons from the IBM design language library, and some project images and a selfie image. Also, I just wanted to showcase what is possible with the Bento Grid. So here's an example of my portfolio. It's slightly been tweaked, but this is what you could build. It's like a one-pager, and everything you need is here, and it gives that luxurious feel for recruiters. Here's some other examples. This came from the community in the Figma file, so you could find some of this there. But yeah, Bento Grid is essentially a bunch of rectangles that are well fit together and can be arranged in any pattern. So those are some examples. We can get started with the tutorial itself. So what you'll need is a 1440 by 1024 frame, also a 390 by 844 for mobile. So the way to actually get started with the Bento Grid is you come here to this layout grid and you hit this, and the default 8-point grid is a bit too small, so we want to go 48. Now it's not perfect here, but it's almost perfect, and then you can adjust it afterwards. And we did the 48 value for this, and the same for the mobile. We'll go with 48. This way the rectangles fit nicely and should be the same size. Great. So how we get started is you get your rectangle tool up top, and you want to make sure that whatever you do is almost always a rectangle or a square. And the best way to start is to leave that 48 margin top and bottom. So always start here, and you can start out by drawing a clean square here. So 192 by 192 pixels. And the idea is that we're going to arrange the content by these bento rectangles depending on the content we want to showcase, right? So for example, if we're doing a portfolio, we're going to need some sort of introduction, similar to what we have here in my portfolio example, some sort of introduction, some social links, maybe design process, not necessary fully, something that I've added. Yeah, and then a project section. So this I actually coded up myself. But yeah, I'm sure you could use other websites like Framer or Webflow to build something like this. So we'll get started with the introductory div. So you can do this any which way you want. Just make sure it fits and snaps there. You should be able to do this by going to your settings and clicking snap to grid here. Snap to, objects or grid. So we can start out with a rectangle like my example, or make it elongated in this direction. So it really depends on how you want to do it, but this is just a general example here. So I'm thinking that is good enough for an introduction. We can probably come here and add some social links here as well, so you can get creative with this. So the idea is that whatever we have for the margin here, or the gutter for the grid, is going to be consistent. So that's why this 48 grid works pretty well, is because it's going to keep that always consistent here. So it doesn't need to be perfect. You could just go like that. So see, we have this spacing down here. If you were to do something like this, it looks a little bit off, right? So we don't really want to be doing that. We want to keep these grid spacings consistent here. So we can give this a border radius of 4 here. Change the color to 333. And we'll change the background to 90. Something like 40, 40, 40, right? So, okay. So this is the header. You can start out in a basic way. So, header about me. This is the socials. We need our project area somewhere, so maybe we'll go here. So I'll be doing it in a bit of a different way. I'm just going to keep referencing my portfolio itself. So this is my whole project section, and this kind of automatically flips through my projects, and there's a manual toggle here. We won't be doing something like that here just for ease of building it out with Framer, as I've coded this using CSS Grid. If you want to get down that route or see something about that, I can showcase that, but it's very in-depth, and in terms of ease of use, going with something like Framer or Webflow is probably best. So we can quickly do some more rectangles here. So you want to keep it flush to the grid. You can probably see that easier if I change this color. You can change this color by clicking into this and setting the grid up. So that's the idea, right? Makes it easier just to see it. Okay. So this is the whole section for the projects, but I don't want it that wide. You know, I want this header to be more in your face, social secondary, and project showcase what draws you in. So I'm going to divide this by 3. So this width here, if you take a look, that's this whole width from this corner to that corner. If you divide it by 3, it gives you an average. And so what I'll do is I'll snap that to the grid there. So this is going to be the project slides here. Well, it's still a little bit off, so what I'm going to do is make it 1 shorter. Okay. So that is the idea of a bento grid. I mean, it still could be laid out a bit better. We don't want to have it inconsistent here, so I mean, there's a couple different ways to do this. If you wanted to have one take up most of the space, or just have it laid out like a grid of 4, you can do that. So that's an example there. And also you can always extend this frame to any height and adjust it. So it's not perfect, but this is the example we'll be going with. Yeah, so we can get started with the header and about me section. Great, so I have tidied a couple things up a little bit. So I just decided with a different project format down below, and I changed this height a little bit. Also rounded these corners to 12. That way it gives a better feel. And I also wanted to show that you can hide this grid by clicking this eye icon to get a feel of how it will look like. So these are the assets I've prepared. I will show the final values at the end. So this is a profile image. I got it from UI Faces plugin here. So you can go and grab that. You can also do anything you think is best, right? I mean, that's the part of design that's my favorite, right? So you can play around, experiment here. I'm just going to do a basic layout that will work in any case scenario, but the thing is here is that you always want to align things in these grid cells as much as possible. So something like the text here, you really don't want to do something like that. You can, but it's not ideal. So this is Avenir next, bold, and I'll do something like this. I'm just gonna hit K to scale this text, and we can see if I hit Alt, it'll drag out better. You want to line it to the top there and drag it out. See how big it's gonna be. Might be a little too large there, so I'm gonna make it smaller. So this is the stuff like you can do. You can play around, see how it works. It's okay if the text itself overflows out of the cell horizontally, but not vertically. So it's still a little too large here. I'll make it smaller. So you might get some odd values in here, but that's okay. In code, you can adjust it to however you want. I'm sure in Framer you could do that also. Okay, so here we go. So it's also ideal if we keep these margins interior here. So I'll just draw a box to show what I'm working with. So this is the margin top. This is the margin left. We're going to keep this exact spacing the same from all components as much as possible because it will look the best. I will also put this to the left here. I mean to the right, sorry. And the bottom. Great. So we'll do some bit of an introduction. You can also go here and change this color to make it less visible. Cool. So, hi, I am John Doe. And if you want to add emoji, you can. You can grab a different font size here, put it down below. The thing is, to personalize this the most, you don't really want to overdo the icon. Some people overdo these emojis or other icons, so keep it fairly simple. Yeah, so this is what you can do. We'll also bring in another piece of text here, make it a little bit smaller, demi bold, and say get in touch. Now you'll hit Shift A, you'll select a color. So in this type of scenario in dark mode, you might want to hit reverses. So I picked this background color here, so it'll feel like this is punched out of this section. Cool. We can adjust this value. Oh, wrong one. We can adjust this value here. 48 by 48. It's obviously a bit tall. 48 by 24. Now with something like this, the button, it's okay if it goes outside of the grid. We're trying to draw attention to this. So you can break the grid strategically, but it's ideal to keep it inside the grid as much as possible. So this section is fairly basic. You might want to add a little bit about yourself there, so we could bring this down. I wouldn't keep it this generic as I'm about to do it, but you know, you can adjust as you see fit. I design experiences for internal B2B SaaS solutions. So I'm just going to copy and paste this to keep it a bit longer, so you can get a feel for an introductory statement. So something like this makes the most sense. We could also add a stroke here. And then just to make it really fancy, we can go for a linear gradient on the stroke and set it at an angle. Also a little bit less. Cool. So this is the introductory section. You can take a look without the grid on. And so you'll want to design for all sections in this way. What I'm going to do is I'm going to complete the rest of these sections and get back to you and show you where I end up. So this is what I've come back with. It's pretty rough. Obviously I'm doing this in a short time. If it was my portfolio, I would be spending a lot more time on it. But here's just a rough example of how you can utilize the Bento Grid for any of your design projects or products. So yeah, this is just an example of a hero page where you have your greeting component. You can get in touch. That can scroll down to this contact me section or open up to a modal, however you would want that experience to be, or go straight to your email. We have the social icons over here, and you may notice there's a couple of different flourishes here. So there's a stroke of white at 30% at the top. If you want to select which one it goes to, you can select it by doing this. So that's what it looks like on all. And if you select top, it kind of adds a little bit of 3D aspect. Also with the drop shadow here, you can add this accordingly. If you were to click into this read case or this whole card, however you want the experience set up, it would take you to the actual case study itself. So that's the example of the home page. And also, guys, I apologize. The grid here would be 24 pixels instead of 48. This way you can adjust it however you see fit. But yeah, here's where we're at. You can turn it on and off. This button might be a little bit too small, so we can resize it. Great. You always want your touch targets above 40 pixels on desktop and even mobile especially. So here is the socials, the cases, and this could take you just to a page where you only have cases and more and other versions of these case studies, depending on how you want the experience. And then the contact me. So a quick heads up, you can also break the grid as you see fit, like this contact me is living on the background and isn't inside its own container, or you can do it the same way, whereas it's in a container like this. But yeah, thank you all for watching.